everybody, it's Emily at Arc Schooling, and today I want to share 24 books I want to read in 2024. I was not going to do this, and then I was just like, maybe I should. So basically, I have a giant stack of things here. These are 24 books that I own, that are on my shelves, that have been like calling out to me for a while. These are things that I've either talked about repeatedly, I've just like been looking at on my shelves, wondering why I haven't had a chance to pick that up yet. So I've got a lot of things here, a lot of variety. Some of them you probably see me talk about before, maybe some of them you haven't. So in no particular order whatsoever, let's start talking about these 24 books. First, I have My Brilliant Friend by Elena Ferrante. This is the first book in the Neapolitan novels. I bought this based on several people's recommendation, and I just never picked it up. But I've heard so many good things about this. I feel like it's something that I should like. I don't know. I don't know why I haven't picked it up yet. This is set in I think the 1950s in Italy, and we're following these friends through their childhood. I want to say this is a series in which we're following the same characters growing up. So in this one, they are young children growing into adolescence, I think. I don't know. This is the kind of thing I typically enjoy, so I don't know why I haven't picked it up yet. That's going to be the story of this entire video. Why have I not read this yet? Why have I not read this yet? This is Bloody Fool for Love, a Spike prequel by William Ritter. It's a Spike book. Why have I not read this? This is I was so excited about it. This came out a year ago. I've had this for a year and I haven't read it yet. What am I doing? I don't even know what it's about. I have no idea what this is about. I just know it's about Spike. And it's set before Buffy. So this is Spike. I think this is in the 1970s. I don't even know. I don't need to know. I just know it's a Spike novel and I want to read it. I bought It Came From the Closet, Queer Reflections on Horror. This is a book of essays edited by Joe Valise, and I've been wanting to read this for months and I haven't even picked it up yet. This is exactly what it sounds like. So this is nonfiction, and it's just a whole bunch of essays by a variety of writers about their favorite horror movies and how those movies helped them to come to terms with their identities, whatever. So I just think this is going to be something that I enjoy. This is exactly the kind of thing that I like. I love horror movies, and I love talking about horror movies. So this is definitely my thing. They talk about a lot of movies in here, like The Exorcist, Jennifer's Body, Pet Sematary, one of my favorites. I think there's a essay in here about Nightmare on Elm Street, about Us, about Halloween. So there's a lot going on in here, and I just want to read it. A relatively new purchase, but Mayfly by C.J. Lead has been just screaming at me. I want to read this so bad. I've heard so many good things. This cover is just everything. I want to read this. I don't even know exactly what this is beyond Unhinged Woman. Sort of like a female version of American Psycho. Yes, I want. Yellow Face by R.F. Kuang. I wanted to read this last year, did not get to it. Top priority to read it this year. I just know that I'm going to love it. I've enjoyed her other books so far, so I feel like this one is going to be just as good. This is a story about a white woman stealing her Asian best friend's story and putting it out as her own, and the ridiculousness that goes with that. Fairy Tale by Stephen King is one of his newer books that I was really excited about, and then just nothing. I didn't pick it up. And I've heard really mixed reviews. I've had people tell me that this was not good. I've heard people tell me that it was really good. So it's portal fiction though, so I feel like I should like that. But I do have mixed feelings on Stephen King's books when it comes to anything outside of horror. I love his horror writing. Those are some of my favorites, but when it comes to fantasy stuff, I have not always enjoyed that. So I'm hoping that this is good. This book was in my TBR in December and I didn't get to it, but it's also been in my TBR multiple times. I've pictured this book and talked about this book a lot. And that's My Favorite Thing is Monsters by Emil Ferris. And I am absolutely, definitely going to read this year. Like, it's a graphic novel. I've had it on my shelves forever. I think I bought, when did this come out? Yeah, this came out in 2016, so I probably bought this either in 2016 or shortly thereafter. And I've never picked it up. What am I doing? So, I don't even really know what this is about beyond that it's set in like the 1960s. Set in the tumultuous political backdrop of late 60s Chicago, narrated by a 10-year-old and told through a fictional graphic diary, employing the iconography of B-movie horror imagery and pulp monster magazines. We're following this precocious character as she's trying to solve the murder of her beautiful and enigmatic upstairs neighbor, Anka Silverberg, a Holocaust survivor. We watch the interconnected and fascinating stories of those around her unfold. So, like, it sounds excellent. I know that there's also a sequel coming out really soon, so, like, I need to read this. The Getaway by Lamar Giles. I went to school with Lamar Giles. We were never friends, but, like, I knew who he was. And some of my friends are friends with him and whatnot. So, like, I have a tendency to not want to read people's books when I know them, because I would hate to dislike something that they've written, or like, I don't know, you know what I mean? So, like, I have another friend that I went to school with that I just don't read her books because I know that they're not for me, and I don't want to have any negative feelings like that. But technically Lamar was not my friend, so that's fine. But also this book specifically sounded really good. This one is about a guy who gets a job at this like fancy resort, and things are not what they seem. Things get a little weird, and that's the kind of story that I love. So I'm finally going to pick up a Lamar Giles book because I've been like avoiding it because I went to school with him, and I'm like, what am I doing? We were not friends. Who cares if I don't like it? He doesn't know me. I had Before We Were Yours by Lisa Wingate. I picked this up at a library sale a while ago, and I've heard so many things about this book. This has to do with adoption, and I think like children who were taken from their families forcefully and then adopted out, and what happens because of that. So this is set, I think, in multiple timelines. This is just a book that has been calling. I put this in my TBR at least twice already and didn't get to it. So I'm going to read this year. It's going to happen. I have said multiple times that I am not a fantasy girly. I love the idea of fantasy. I do enjoy some fantasy, but tend to not enjoy reading it. But I've also had this book on my shelf for ages because this is an author that I do want to make myself read. And that is The Blade Itself by Joe Abercrombie. I did read one of his books before and enjoyed it. I read Half a Crown, I think is what it's called. It's his YA trilogy. I read the first book in that and liked it, but never continued the series. And I've been wanting to pick up something else by him. I've heard so many good things about his work, and I've owned this for years. So I want to try to like challenge myself to read it this year. I don't read a lot of fantasy because I find the world building to be a struggle. But I've heard that his writing is kind of similar in vein to George R. R. Martin, who I have read and enjoyed, so I'm hoping that I can read some like grimdark fantasy. I've heard that this is very dark and bloody, and that is exactly what I want from my fantasy. I want to read the newest Angeline Boulley. This is Warrior Girl Unearthed. I loved The Firekeeper's Daughter. Really was excited for this book, and then didn't read it when it came out. But that's okay, because this has only been out for a little while. So this is set in the same world as Firekeeper's Daughter. We're just following different characters. I don't really know too much more than that, but I'm really, really excited to read it. 28 Days, a novel of resistance in the Warsaw Ghetto by David Safir, has been on my shelf for a while. And I don't know why I haven't read this either. Like, this has been screaming at me. Like, I've almost picked this up so many times, but I just, like, never seem to have the time for it, but I really want to read it. That is a topic that I will always want to read more about. I love reading about like Jewish resistance and uprisings and revolts and that kind of that's the thing that I love to read the most about the Holocaust. So like I really want to pick this up. A Sky Full of Song by Susan Lynn Meyer was one of the books I talked about in my 10 books I wish I'd read in 2023 video. I am absolutely going to read this year. This is a book that I just feel is a Emily book. It was written for me. This is a story about a Jewish family in 1905 North Dakota homesteading. Like, I love homesteading stories. I love stories about Jewish families outside of the norm. Like, we always hear about them like set during the Holocaust or in Europe or in like a shtetl somewhere or in New York if it's in America. So like, I'm excited to read about a Jewish family out in the Midwest homesteading. That sounds great. A Land of Permanent Goodbyes by Atia Abawi is a book that I just know I'm going to love. I know this is going to be a favorite. I've heard people tell me this is similar in style to The Book Thief, which is my favorite book. So I that makes me excited. I know this is like narrated by Fate, I think, or Destiny. And yeah, Destiny narrates this heartbreaking story of the consequences of war, showing the Syrian conflict as part of a long chain of struggles spanning through time. So I just know this is going to be a favorite of the year when I do finally read it. So I'm hoping that I can do that this year. This is another one I just recently got. This is The Family Morphoz by Daniel H. Turtel. And this is a book about a messy Jewish family, and I love that. I want all of the messy Jewish families. This is a story where we're following, I think, a family over several decades as I know it starts with them fleeing Nazi Germany, getting to New York, building their family, and all of that. And like, yes, please. I love family sagas, especially when there's all the messiness. That sounds great. Another book I got recently, this is We Must Not Think of Ourselves by Lauren Grodstein. And this, like 28 Days, is also about the uprising in the Warsaw Ghetto. This one, I think we're following a teenage girl or a group of teenagers who are involved in the uprising. In this one, we're following an archivist who is being tasked with like writing about what's happening. Like, they want their stories to be told. So both of these sound excellent. These next two are both part of the classics remixed series that I've been raving about. So I have So Many Beginnings. This is by Bethany C. Morrow, and this one is a Little Women remix. So we're following a family of Black daughters and their experiences during the Civil War. So I just feel like this is going to be everything. I love Little Women. I just think this is going to be really great. I have such good feelings about this book. I've been like desperately wanting to pick it up. And then I have What Souls Are Made Of. This is a Wuthering Heights remix by Tasha Suri. I've never read anything by this author, but Wuthering Heights is one of my favorite classics. So we're following a character, Heathcliff, who is an outsider. He's brought to the household on the Yorkshire moors. He clings to his birth father's language, even though it makes the children of the house call him an animal, and the maids claim he speaks gibberish. Catherine is a young child of the estate's owner, a daughter with light skin and brown curls, and a mother whom nobody speaks about. Her father's grooming her for a place in proper society, and that's all that matters. Catherine knows she must mold herself into someone well-mannered and marriageable, even though such an effort might destroy her spirit. So Catherine and Heathcliff obviously have something in common here, but I believe they're both of Indian descent. I have The Cat I Never Named, A True Story of Love, War, and Survival. This is by Amra Sabik El Reyes, and this is a book about the Bosnian War in the 1990s, and that's something that I've been wanting so much to read more about. It's something that I once read about when I was in high school. I read, I think Zlata's Diary was very popular back then. She was like the new Anne Frank at the time. I remember my synagogue had copies of her diary, and that's how I discovered it. And so I read Zlata's Diary when I was in high school, and I really liked it. And I always wanted to learn more about the Bosnian War. And so when I found out about this book, I immediately purchased it and then did not read it. Because why would I do that? Why would I buy something and immediately read it? So I don't really even know too much about it. Besides that this is a story about one character's like life during the Bosnian War in the 1990s. I have Bunny by Mona Awad. I also have an autographed copy of this book. Where did I get this? I don't even know. But it's signed. So I have Bunny. I've been hearing about this book for years, and I kept saying I was going to read it, and I just haven't. This is a weird one. This, I think, technically falls into dark academia, which is something I want to read more of. And it's also kind of wacky. I've heard it compared to Heather's, which I don't know how accurate that comparison is, but I love Heather's, so I feel like this is potentially something I would love. I have There by Tommy Orange. This one has just been sitting on my shelf for so long, and I don't really know much about it besides that it's got a sequel coming out this year, and I'm like, why haven't I not read this yet? This is a book written by an Indigenous author, and it's, I think this is set... Says it's a relentlessly paced, multi-generational story about violence and recovery, memory and identity, and the beauty and despair woven into the history of a nation and its people. It tells a story of 12 characters, each of whom has private reasons for traveling to the big Oakland powwow. So we're following these separate characters and their experiences as they come to a powwow. I kind of think it's like the adult version of Ancestor Approved. It's like a middle grade short story collection about a whole bunch of different Native Americans all coming to a powwow and all of their different experiences at that powwow, but like their stories kind of cross sometimes because they're all at the same place. I think this is kind of like that, if I'm understanding it correctly. So it's a bunch of short stories that all kind of tie together. So I'm very intrigued by that premise, though. Like, I really enjoyed Ancestor Approved, so I'm really hoping I enjoy this as well. I have The Year We Were Famous by Carol Espy Dagg. I read her middle grade book, Sweet Home Alaska, many years ago. Loved it. Immediately bought this, and then never picked it up. This is based on a true story about the author's family, I believe, where they had to, like, raise a bunch of money. So they went on this like long walk to raise money, I believe. Something to that effect. And like there's like a map in here of like starting in Spokane, Washington, and all the way across to what looks like Cape Cod. So apparently they went on this like long trek across America. It's based on the true story of the author's great aunt and great grandmother. This fast-paced historical adventure shows how far two will go to save their home, find love, and finally resolve their complicated past as mother and daughter. So it just sounds like a good time, and like it's probably going to be a heartwarming, feel-good story, and I want more of that going through 2024. So I'm thinking this could be something that would be cozy to read. Another cozy book, I have The Matchmakers Gift by Linda Cohen Loigman. I read a book by this author of several years back, The Two Family House, I think it was called, and I loved that. So I bought this when it came out, and I haven't picked it up. This one is also historical, set in 1910, and then also set like 2 generations later. So we're following like 2 different timelines. We're following, it has to do with like matchmaking, Jewish families, which is a thing that I enjoy. This might be a romance, but I'm not sure how much romance is included or how much of it's more to do with like the matchmaking aspect of it. The last book, the last of my 24 to read in 2024. I want to read Bloodmarked by Tracy Dion. This is book 2 in the Legendborn cycle. Loved Legendborn. Really wanted to continue and just didn't get to this in 2023. So I definitely want to read it this year before the first book gets too far out of my memory that I have to reread it. This one, I don't really know anything about beyond that it is the sequel. So this is a story following the main character, Bree, as she has discovered her, like, abilities. She has magic abilities that she was born with, that she never learned how to hone, and her mother died before she could teach her about it. So she's kind of like tracing her mother's footsteps and ends up at UNC Chapel Hill, where there is this whole secret underground society of like King Arthur magic, and she finds herself entangled in that. And I'm not going to share more than that because I think everyone should read Legendborn. It's excellent, and I'm excited to continue the series. So those are the 24 books I want to read in 2024. I'm hoping to read lots of other things too, but these are the ones I would like to try to prioritize because I have so many books on my shelves that I've been wanting to read for ages, and why have I not picked them up? I could probably do like 48 books, but let's stick with 24 and 24. So let me know down below which of these books you think I should prioritize, and which ones you want to hear me talk about. I'm going to also try to be doing more book reviewing this year. I feel like I do a lot of talking about books I want to read. I would like to talk about books that I have read so that I can recommend more things. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you guys in my next video. Happy reading. Bye.